Internets, welcome back to another podcast of Sultans and Sneakers. I'm your host, Maheen, the podcaster. On today's show, I am honored to have new Netflix celebrity, Vyasar Ganesan, from Netflix's Indian Matchmaking. Vyasar, thanks so much for coming on the show. What a treat, man. I couldn't sleep. I was trying to get a nap in earlier, and I was worried about sleeping through our time slot. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry you didn't get that nap, man. I'm not a big nap person, but I've started since quarantine hit, and boy, oh boy, I love a good nap.
You know, the other thing is I actually I'm switching jobs right now, right? And it's like I'm going through that background check phase. So it's like it's pretty standard, but you're still like kind of like on edge a little bit. You're always worried about something weird happening.
Oh yeah, well, especially when you're brown, you know, especially when you're brown, because you feel like they're paying a little extra scrutiny. It's actually a really well documented story. Not to get too off topic, but there's like among the Black community, Black professionals are investigated slightly more during background checks because of affirmative action lawsuits. Because employers are afraid to get sued by employees if they let them go, so they investigate them a little bit further to see if they have any grounds, you know, prior to all of that. It's completely messed up because you're applying different standards of investigation to different people that you're interviewing. But it is like a fairly routine practice that a lot of companies practice.
Absolutely. Well, speaking about other races, to start off, one of the first things I noticed when you came on the show last week was you mentioned your initial experience in relationships was with Caucasian women. Is it okay to say white girl? Is that like
you can say white girl? Yeah.
Okay. Is it like Caucasian, the ones of European descent?
Yeah, because that's the thing. They never call themselves white. They'll say, "Oh no, my family is like 2/3 Scottish, a quarter British, you know, and then like a seventh Scandinavian." Like they'll try to It's a very, very common thing. They'll try to say like we have diversity too, you know, but how many generations back was that really diverse? You know, I mean, even like the whole thing with England and France, people are going left and right, back and forth across the channel so many times that like what is English and what is French started meaning less and less, more over and over again. But no, we can say white girls. Go ahead.
Actually, since you mentioned something, I wanted, because I noticed your grandfather was speaking Bangla, or Bengali in the show. Do you have like Bengali roots anywhere?
My grandfather has a lot of friends in that area, and he's from Lucknow, so he's just geographically, I think, closer to all of that. It wouldn't surprise me if they had Bengali roots, though, not at all. My family's from all over India. My grandmother is from a part of Pakistan, or from a part of India that's now Pakistan. Sure. My dad is from South India in Tamil Nadu. My mom is from Dehradun, but we've got family who's married in from Mumbai, Lucknow, Hyderabad, all over the place. So we cover the whole subcontinent.
I got you. You know, the thing is, I don't know. Like the one thing that saddens me a little bit, I don't know my own family history that far back. Like I couldn't tell you like my great grandparents' names, and my grandparents, they all passed away. So, you know, I don't know if that's something documented, right? Like I don't know if it was like for me, it was like a lot of my dad and his friends that came over to America, they didn't track their birthdays back in the 40s. So it's like, it rained that year, I think. There's like typhoon that year. Yeah, that's when you were born. And then it's like everyone's got a birthday of like January 1st.
Right. There's some stone tablet in the village that's got the exact date and time, but ain't nobody making photocopies of that and bringing that with them to the States. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. So it does, like, because I think people sometimes have this assumption that people from the old country, we have this like trait, you know, this family tree, and I actually don't know if that exists in my family. I don't know that I could go back and like trace generations. I know that like I remember I had a professor in college. His last name was Mazumdar, and my grandfather's last name was Mazumdar, and that's like, and he was from Calcutta, so he was like Bengal, part of India. So I was like, maybe there's because I was like, so I'm assuming also Mazumdar I thought was like a Hindu name. So I had some assumption that probably my family is Muslim, that they converted from Hinduism at some point in the past, but I don't know when.
See, that's what's so fascinating about India is that it's just there's so much travel and crisscrossing. People assume that like your generations and generations, your family comes from the same region, but it's just not the case. It's not true. India is a place of migration and movement. It's why the Indian diaspora is so wide across the world, because we traveled all over India first before we got outside.
Absolutely.
We were doing some genealogical research on my dad's side, and we discovered an ancestor who is either who's 15th century South India's most famous horse chieftain. But one of my aunts said, well, this word could be mistranslated. He might not have been a horse chief. He could have been a horse thief. Either way, he was famous and he worked with horses. But like, he was all over India. Like, you don't just get horses from one part of India, especially not just South India.
Absolutely, so yeah.
You're getting going all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
Back to the relationship thing. So you got exposure to relationships dating white girls, and it reminded me a close friend of mine last year came to visit me in Chicago, and he's Bangladeshi, and he's only dated white women for the most part, but now he's trying to settle down with like a Desi chick, right? So he tells me he goes on a date with this Bengali girl, and then she's like, I think he lets out of the bag that he's only dated white girls, and so she's like, oh, so now that you want to settle down, you're coming to the brown side. You know what I'm saying? Like, have you ever heard that kind of rhetoric? Because it's almost like the white girls are who you party with, and you do whatever the hell you want, and then you marry the Indian girl or the brown girl.
Yeah. Maheen, you seem like a pretty frank guy, so we're gonna be frank. We're gonna be honest. Sure. It's a trope. Like, it's a real trope. The brown guy community, we all know that the trope exists of being the guy who has dated white girls and tries to marry a brown girl, right? You want a wild girl to screw around with and have a good time with, but when it comes to like long-term stuff, you're thinking, big picture. But part of it is also dating is a very young thing, and when you're young, you're stupid. Like, we have to reserve the right for our people to be shitheads too. Right? We can't, like, being a model minority is an image that is portrayed and is a false image. Like, there are plenty of idiots among us. There are plenty of people who make bad decisions and dumb choices, like downing a whole bottle of Ciroc in one evening. There's plenty of bad decision making that happens all around. I'm not saying that dating white women is a bad decision. What I'm saying is that people, when they're young, date who they can date. And everyone dates who they can date for different reasons or different opportunities. For some people, it's figuring out what being Indian American means or being brown in this country means. For some people, it's because they grew up in a white town. There's not that many options for them. Or when they go into college, there's not that many brown people at that school. For me, that was the case. I didn't start dating really until I got to college. And there were 5 Indian people at that school. Mm-hmm. All of us knew each other, and none of us wanted to know each other. It's the weirdest thing when you're surrounded by Indians who don't want to be with you. They're comfortable being the only brown person in the room.
It's like the other guy on the other podcast mentioned, Chris from American Desi. When he had all brown roommates, he was like, what the hell's going on?
Exactly. Why are you putting this all together, man? Yeah, it's a weird thing. But the trope definitely exists. That's the thing. It's like all these tropes that people play into in so many ways. For me personally, it was really just what I had at the time. Those are my options for dating, and I pursued them, and I tried. And when I got to grad school, I was in New York. Obviously, my options were a lot bigger. But I also, was working to put myself through Columbia. I worked for 2.5 straight years. What relationships I did have, that was the time that I had for them, and even then I didn't pursue it. And as you grow older and you learn what you want, you have a right to want what you want. You have a right to look for things what you want. If you just have time to screw around and have a bunch of one-night stands, then that's the kind of lifestyle you have, and you'll find people who fit that lifestyle. If you have the time to start thinking about bigger picture things, about thinking about what it means to have a life partner and actually do that reflection, you'll start looking for people who fit that too. And not saying that the trope is unjust, but you have to look at the reasons behind it. People get more reflective as they get older. They start thinking about what means more to them, and they start thinking about their purpose and their place in the universe, and their goals and their lifestyles and what they're looking for change.
I got you. Where did you go to high school? Like, what part of the country?
Yeah, so I grew up in Austin here in Texas. I went to this little magnet school called LASA, Liberal Arts and Science Academy. It's actually the same school that I work at, which is a huge trip because almost all of my teachers are still at that school. But it's a great little place, very small class sizes compared to some of the other big high schools in Texas, very strong, in math and science, obviously, but also with a huge liberal arts underpinning as well. And super diverse too. Among all the high schools in Austin, it's a really incredible place.
So let me ask you on the previous on the other some of the other interviews you mentioned, your mom and your family was they're pretty chill, right? As far as dating went. How come you didn't start
Absolutely.
dating in like high school?
It was just, I was the tall, awkward kid. I was the tall, awkward, gangly Indian kid. And I also was, my family is chill now. It doesn't mean that they've always have been
Okay.
chill. And we certainly went through periods where, there were less chill than others. It was a chill continuum, if you will.
Mhm.
But, I was a nerd. Back in good old 2007, 2006, ain't nobody wanted to date nerds. And I've spent my spare time playing Dungeons and Dragons and building computers and just that kind of stuff. If I met girls at the temple, we were doing temple-related activities, and it's not really the best atmosphere to be like, yo, you want to catch a movie after this Gurdwara ceremony or something?
Yeah. Is Hindu culture generally like conservative when it comes to like gender relations?
It really depends on who you talk to, because Hinduism is such a massive, expansive thing. It can be, and it isn't in some ways. It's not like they discourage you from talking to people from the opposite sex. At the same time, you go to a temple and there's people who have never been to this temple before, or people from outside the community who are just visiting, and they come with their families and they have different expectations of different roles. Like being a good Hindu is very much like being a good Muslim. There's lots of different definitions of what that is. There's lots of different versions and views on what it takes to be that good person. And so, of course, everyone applies different standards, and conflict arises from, well, I think you're this, well, I think you're that, and I think you should behave this way. I think certainly there were definitely girls who I talked to who were very much like, oh, we shouldn't be seen together. This is wrong. This is bad. Of course, when it came to my cousin who's much better looking than me, they didn't mind flouting that convention at all. But see, that's the best thing about being Indian American and being a shithead, right? Is that you get to choose when you flout these conventions and not,
Right.
We just got to allow ourselves to have that freedom in some ways.
Absolutely. When I was in high school, so like we had like I grew up in this, because Bangladeshis there's less of us than there are of Indians, right?
Yes.
But there's still a hell of a lot of us compared to like other like countries or people from other countries, right? So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and there's like a pretty decent sized Bangladeshi community in Columbus. And I remember me and my friends growing up, like most of my friends growing up, you meet them at like the dawa. I don't know what you guys like the dawas, the parties that like happen every weekend. And so I naturally grew up with these guys. So when we like hit puberty, and there's like a whole bunch of us within like a 2-year range of age, and we never really, I think we saw the girls in our community that we also grew up with as like rivals in a way. And we felt like, nah, it's not going to be like, so when we started hitting puberty, we weren't going to chill with them. They were like their own thing. And so we were always thinking about like white girls at school, and we can maybe get that too, like, or girls of other backgrounds, so to speak, depending, like some folks, it could have been black, could have been Latino, depending on where we went to school. But like the Bengali girls in our own community weren't like, we weren't game for them. Now, granted, we're also Muslims, so the dynamic is there's no way in hell you're getting caught dating anybody, right? Period. Although I think that if there was a Bengali girl in the community, and my friend like did this later, he like broke this rule, you could get away with it because you're already seeing them anyways. You feel what I'm saying? And so the parent, like, and your parents are kind of oblivious, so they can kind of like, they wouldn't notice if you're going to the car during the dawat to make out. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly. Yeah, no, it's true. That you get one of the best things about being a teenager is testing the limits of how much you can get away with. Is trying to figure out where you can get your feet wet, where you can figure out what's okay and what's not, where you can figure out you can push the boundaries of how permissive things are. It's an amazing, terrifying space to live in and occupy. God, it's so crazy because I'm thinking about my childhood. I did not have the same childhood as a lot of my cousins did. I was like, way too well behaved. I did not hit my rebellious, like testing the limits of my mom's forgiveness until college. And by that point, it was too late. Like everybody was a lot more wild than I was. And I was like, well, I guess the wild thing I'm going to do is grow out my hair. Damn it. I'm going to get my long ass hair. I'm going to join a metal band. Yeah, this is my rebellious phase. But I wasn't like, I never did any of that stuff. And looking back on it, I was like, do I know why? Do I have a good reason why? And I just remember like, it's because it was just me and my mom. When you're growing up with a single parent household, like you really care about each other a lot. You don't want to hurt each other. You don't want to put each other through that worry or sense of fear. Like I would go out and party until 2 a.m. some nights, but mom would always come and pick me up. And she like, I had a phone to call her and she always would come and get me. And we would always talk about stuff. And we just had a very different relationship than a lot of other families, just because it was literally just me and her.
Right. So one thing now I'm gonna get myself in a lot of trouble right now. So that back in high school, so like you know how like all girls get some facial hair, right? That's why waxing's a thing. But brown girls, because they got like darker hair, it's gonna you know what I'm saying. So we used to like rip on our female counterparts for having like facial, even though they didn't really. We would like just insinuate it. And then we'd have come up with all these theories like, oh, I wonder where else they have hair. Right. And so we would just like make so we would just make this entire like thing up. It's like and that was part of it. And so what happened, I remember I remember the time when we all found out as a bunch of group of guys that like brown girls could be attractive. It was there was this one family that, you know, their sons are friends of mine. Dad's like a rich ass doctor, like in, you know, this mansion out in the burbs. And they throw like these huge parties, maybe like 2 or 3 times a year. And they throw these parties that bring in people from like out of state. So you had a bunch of out of state, like Bengali girls coming in. And then we're like, I'll talk. And where they came from, it was easy. It was natural for them to talk to the guys in their community. Like we didn't interact with our female rivals or counterparts in Columbus, but they did wherever they lived. And, you know, so they come in and they're talking to us and we're shit. And I was like, damn, these girls look kind of good too. And like my friends were like, but I remember talking to my one friend. I had one friend. I was like, yo, bro, like, does that chick got like, does he have a mustache? And then she's like, nah, man, that's just skin color. I was like, sure. But I remember that's when it started like, oh, okay, I guess brown girls can be attractive. I guess there might be an option here at some point.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, it's, you know, because it's the way that men are told about who they can date and women are told about who they can date, it's completely different. Like if a brown guy, I don't know if this is true for your community, but it's like what I've seen and for us is that like if a brown guy is dating a white girl and there's the potential of them getting married, then everybody loses their mind. They're like, no, this is like not okay. She's like don't have any values, don't have any cultures. What's she gonna pass on to their children? But if you flip the script and if it's a brown girl dating a white guy, almost always people are like, yeah, that's okay. Like he'll learn to love spicy food. Like she's the one who's gonna teach the kids about all the holidays and what to wear and why you should take your shoes off when you go speak to someone's house and stuff. Like that's usually gonna be fine. And it's just the way that people are taught. At the same time, I recognize that there's plenty of brown girls out there who have been told from day one, you're going to find your true Indian prince. You're going to get married to some Shah Rukh Khan type. You're going to get married to some, you know, handsome, heroic king or prince who's going to be your Raja and stuff. Like there's this weird fairy tale message that also gets pushed out there at the same time. Like the ways in which both genders are taught about who it's okay to pursue and who it's not okay to pursue and at what age you can start doing it. There's a great Canadian comedian who's on a couple of Just Rain videos. He was saying like, once you get married, then you can have a boyfriend. Once you get married, then you can cut your hair. Once you get married, you can do anything you want because then you're married. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of like girls are kind of told that, you know, you can sort of figure out your life after you get married, where boys are told, well, you know what, he's just figuring out his life, then he'll settle down at some point. It's a very weird double standard that our culture is so fond of perpetuating.
Yeah, that's, you know, so again, for Bangladesh, like 90% Muslim. So there's always this idea. So there's always this idea in the back of everyone's head, even if they're like less practicing, that the preservation of the Islamic religion in the generations.
Yes.
So generally that's always, so I would say, okay, so if you're not going to marry a Bengali person and you're like a little bit more secular, the white person is the next best option. Because at least your kids will become fair. And I know the show got a lot, like people were really like, they lost their mind about like the issue about skin color and, you know, colorism, so to speak, that exists in these processes, right, in our communities. I mean, but it's there. I mean, I don't know that we're even close to like getting our heads around it, to be honest. But not to digress, but so I think for our community it would be a little different. But then when you go into other communities, now you're like, oh, why would you marry someone who's like African American or, you know, Latino, etc., or Asian, like Chinese? Like that's completely now you're breaking the mold, right? Yeah. But so for me it was interesting. So like my approach on relationships has always been this. It's been like this, right? So in high school I wasn't allowed to date. My parents are pretty conservative Muslims, even though I wasn't growing up. But the thing is that in high school there's a girl I liked and I couldn't really, and it was reciprocated, but I couldn't do anything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like my dad had me on lock. He wouldn't even let me have a job. Oh, because he was like, you got to focus on your studies. And I was like, well, if I can't get no job, I got no money to take some chick on some date. So I'm like screwed here. So eventually, like this, like, you know, I think she was expecting me to make a move, and I don't know what the hell to do. And then I can't do anything, to be honest. Like, what am I gonna do? Right? Yeah,
exactly. No, it's one thing to be dating while you're brown and trying to figure out that scene. It's another thing to be dating while you're brown and poor, when you're just busted out trying to figure out like one of my first dates I went on, she worked at the movie theater, so she got free tickets. So I was like, oh, I can spend my allowance money on popcorn, I guess. But that's really all like she was paying for most stuff. Actually, my first real girlfriend in college, she was a rich girl, and she was a tea heiress. And her family was a British family. It's like, wait a minute, I'm a brown dude dating a British tea heiress. Yeah, I'm getting mine. Yeah. Reparations are here today. It was like, buy me 2 Chipotle burritos. That's what I want.
You know, but for me it was always like, but I liked this girl through most of high school, right? And then I liked another, and then all of a sudden I liked some other girl who was like a brown girl, who anyone who knows me and grew up in Columbus knows what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna like spill any beans, you know. It's a freaking open secret.
Columbus tea.
Yeah. All right. So basically that. So I've always, and I liked her for like 3 years, and it never like went any. I guess it was never, that was never mutual though, right? And then all of a sudden I kind of was like doing my own thing, and then I meet my wife, and then we talked for like a month. We got married. So I think I've always been like very limited. So because when I went to college, it was like the girl that I liked was back home. You follow what I'm saying?
I follow what you're saying.
And so and it's almost like that. I was like, oh yeah, but I'm gonna try to get that girl when I go home for the summer. Yeah. So I probably had all these chicks I could have had disposal to in college when I first started. And again, remember, I'm not that religious at the time. So if I didn't have her like kind of in that backdrop, it wouldn't have, you know, but it was like this fake bait. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't getting anywhere with it. It was just like, it was like some like mental internal cock block. Right. But like, you know, but then when I went back, I finished at Ohio State, and when I transferred, I had become more religious, and then that was kind of like, okay, well, that's not how I do things. I actually proposed to somebody once when I was and we were very formal. I remember one time I was at work. I used to work at a construction like company. I was at work. I got an email from somebody I knew. I was the president of the Muslim Student Association, and one of the ladies there sent me an email saying like, hey, I'd be interested in marriage to you. Can you, if you reciprocate, you can go speak to my dad. Right. And yeah, so it was like very direct. Yeah. And in the same frame, there was somebody else I was at one point interested in, and I went and spoke to her father. Right. And it didn't work out, but that's kind of the way you're going about things. It's a little, at that point it was different. So when I met my wife, and we were talking, I was copying her dad on every email. You were like doing everything, like now it's becoming like everything by the book. So do you find that in the Hindi communities? Do you find like, I know there's different angles culturally. You got Sima Auntie and her, that's your cue for
Sima Taparia from Mumbai.
Right. Going to the horoscope, folks and stuff, which is like, you see that Hindu element infused with South Asian culture. So that's kind of a little bit. Have you seen anything where maybe Hindu couples or Hindus are a little, or follow this very like Hindu American, so to speak, follow this very conservative kind of trajectory, or how is it? What are your thoughts on that?
It's funny because I think about my family, and it's like all the marriages that have happened among my cousins, they got married to, either their childhood friends who turned into boyfriends, who turned into husbands, or they met someone in college and the families happened to already be friends, and it happened to just work out that way. There are very few marriages that I can think of in my cousin's generation, at least, and other Hindu American generations that have had this very rigid formal process of arranging and stuff like that. The ones that I'm trying to think of, it was still very amicable and still very laid back and still very much like we're doing this out of a sense of loyalty and culture and honor that we're going through this formal process, but we already have made up our minds. Like, this is already what we want. This is just a formality at this point. But man, like the way you're describing it, it's like, we need a Muslim matchmaking. Where's our Bangladeshi matchmaking? Where's that show? That would be amazing to be able to dive in and showcase that.
People, yeah. So the two girls that I mentioned in my MSA days, that one sent me a proposal. Literally, that was like a proposal, right? Like it was like cutting to the chase. It was pretty much like, and then the other side is, but both of them were not Bangladeshi. They were Muslims. So I think for me, my wife is Bangladeshi, by the way. Which has its benefits down the road, but that was never really critical for me. For me, when I was looking to get married 11, 12 years ago, I've been married 11 years now. For me, the number one factor was, was she a Muslim, right? And then everything else I didn't really care about. My parents obviously wanted me to marry Bangladeshi, right? But there's a fair amount of good, like, I would say people who were like Orthodox Muslims who are also Bangladeshi. I just wasn't coming across them. The way it happened was that in Thanksgiving weekend of 2008, I'm at my dad's house and in Columbus visiting, and he's got like a stack of like biodatas. And there's one he's like really hype on.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking through it, right? And he gives it to me, and it's I'm like, okay, she's from Itta Bena, Mississippi. And I look it up, like, where the hell is this place? It's in the Delta of Mississippi.
Yeah.
And the first thing that goes to my mind is like, I'm gonna be bored as hell, going down there. Now, the thing about, I told some of my friends, like, hey, my dad gave me a biodata from growing Mississippi, but a lot of people don't know this. My friends were like, yo, that's perfect for you, because I used to be into country music, like way back in the day.
There you go.
And I was like big into like Southern food, like grits and sweet tea and all that stuff. But I kind of phased out of it. And so I would always talk about, like, man, marrying a Southern belle would be kind of cool, right?
Southern Muslim belle, man, that's an image right there.
So I get this girl from Mississippi, but I was like, you know what? And I told my dad, listen, she's in medical school. So like the only reason you're interested in her because you see her as like as a freaking bank. I mean, that's what I told my dad.
It's all about the Benjamins, not the
Right. Yeah. I'm an engineer by degree, and but to be honest, it's like this, the parents get this like satisfaction of saying, oh, my son is engineer and his wife's a doctor, kind of thing. That whole status thing.
It's like Pokemon cards, man. It's like Pokemon. Like back in the homies back in the days, like, oh yeah, check out this first edition holographic Charizard. And the parent comes like, oh yeah, check out my son married a doctor,
Yeah. So before we get off track, so you work as a school counselor, right?
Yes,
so
I am a college counselor. Yeah,
that is not one of the prototypical like Desi like professions that you're allowed to do.
Yes, no, it's not.
So I'm surprised that it didn't come up too much. Sima Auntie mentioned it during the show that like because I think it came up when you were talking to, was it Manisha?
Yes.
That like the kind of like she kind of highlighted a little bit about the monetary aspect of it, because you're not gonna become rich doing what you do, right?
No, yeah, I'm never gonna I'm making more money than I ever thought I was gonna earn. Frankly, I feel really good about it, but I also recognize I am not making money. Teachers are still horribly underpaid and everything like that.
Right.
I'll always have a job. That's what I know for sure. Like
Right.
it's a public sector job, and no robot can do what I do, which is really comforting to hear. But yeah, so on the show, the way it played out, the way at least it looked to play out, was that Manish and I were having difficulty in talking about money. That's sort of the angle that it was coming from, and that's pretty true. Really, what it came down to is like we both have just different ways that we express appreciation or show not express appreciation. That's the wrong way of phrasing it, but like use money. Just frankly, we just have like different ways of using money. Her family comes from a different background financially than mine and spends their money a little bit differently than what my family does. So there was just like an incompatibility there with just how we spend it, not necessarily how we earn it. I know that the show presents it definitely in that way, but there's a lot of editing that goes into these things for sure too.
Sure, absolutely.
I wouldn't say that it was inaccurate. I mean, but at the same time, I also think that, when you make money, you're allowed to decide how you spend it. That's the rule. Like you get the money, you decide what you're going to spend on it. And if you can't respect how the other person spends their money, or you don't understand why they spend the money on the things that they do, well, then it's like, there has to be a baseline level of, I may not understand this, but I at least respect it.
Okay, absolutely. So I think for you, did your mom ever tell you like, hey, Vyasar, let's not don't become a counselor because no one's going to marry you?
No, it was never anything like that. Mom is super like chill and progressive. Like it was one of the reasons that she's not more in the show is because she was too laid back. At one point she said on camera, look, it doesn't matter if he gets married or not as long as he's happy. That's how far she is there. So it was never a thing with her. My mom, being a single mom when we moved to Austin, she was working every job she could. She was going to nursing school part-time. She was selling phone cards. She was working for the IRS. She was on the hustle,
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like, it was just, everyone in their family has to work. And no one cares what your job is as long as you're working. That's the thing. For me, and she worked in education too. She was a special ed teacher. She was an art teacher. So she was proud of me for going into education. She was really proud of me for going back to the same high school that I graduated from and working there too. Because she wanted me to sort of live life on my own terms and to seek out things and be independent. And that's sort of what I did and how I wanted to do it.
Sure. Okay.
Certainly for other members of most of my family, we don't have doctors in my family by any means. It's actually a big sticking point with a lot of my older relatives. Like, why haven't we gotten a single doctor yet out of any of these kids? Like most of us, my cousins are like in various sectors of business or finance or startup worlds or things like that. Some of them have worked in like the legal sector for a bit, but we're also just a very, very different kind of family. I have a cousin who moved to India to pursue a degree in social work, and now she's an author. My uncle in Florida invests in a lot of different businesses, but also like owns a string of gas stations and works tirelessly to maintain those. My uncle's one of my uncles is a yoga teacher. One of my uncles bounces around between different companies like they're trading him like Pokemon cards. Like we just have a very different outlook professionally. But I don't think anyone in my family has ever tied my professional status to the likelihood of me getting married, which has been really nice. But I also recognize that it's not the case for every Indian. Like it's a big stereotype. And you have to also understand like how to unpack that. Like where does that come from? This notion that doctor, lawyer, engineer, and even now lawyer is not the big one. It's like business or finance has kind of replaced being a lawyer. Because if you unpack it, really it comes from this innate immigrant drive to look for stability and success, right? Wanting careers and professions where there's high earnings, great benefits, you got flexibility so you can move around between jobs, and you're not likely to get fired, or it's going to be a safe job in some ways. So that's where a lot of the drive comes, is that we want the next generation to have the same shared level of success and stability that the previous generation had or didn't have. And keep pushing that forward and keep creating that intergenerational story of success and creating intergenerational wealth, which is really, really interesting, especially because when you consider now in 2020, where you've got Indians on TV, you've got Aishwarya Rai in Netflix and TV shows, you've got Indian performers and classical musicians touring the country, you've got people proving that we can be so much more than those three things. And these stereotypes still stick around. Like 90% of the Indian kids that I work with at my school, 90% of the Muslim kids that I work at my school, they all want to be doctors. Some of them faint at the sight of their own blood and they still want to be doctors.
Yeah. No, on the show itself, not in your story, but with Aparna. Got matched up with Srinivas Rao. I don't know if you knew who he was before. He's
got a podcast, right? He has a show.
I used to subscribe to his podcast. I used to listen to his podcast so it's not his podcast is bad. What I do is I listen to I'm subscribed to 40 shows at a time. And so but he had like Tim Ferriss, Seth Godin, like he's big time.
Yeah, he's real big time.
And I was like watching, and they were like blowing him off like he's not some successful dude. I was like, yo, you know how much grind you got to put in to take a podcast to that level?
Yeah.
You know, so that to me, but to me, it was like, I don't know if it was a part, because I think podcasting in general, a lot of people don't like understand it as a medium. Because like your full-time podcasting, like what the hell is that? You know? And it seemed like her mom had the same thing. Like they didn't really, and maybe it wasn't something that, and I could see, because he's literally like a celebrity, as far as I'm concerned, right?
Right.
And I'm like, and it seemed to me almost like he was just being super humble about it, so not putting himself out there, but that caused them to think that like, oh, this guy's just a bum.
It's a weird thing, right? Like you present yourself as being humble, and you know, some people think you go too far, and you're like, well, yeah, he's just another schlep. He's just another schlub. It's the same thing. I got blasted on Twitter the other day for not being too ambitious, despite like working 5 part-time jobs to get myself through my MFA at Columbia, finished an MFA in 2 years, being a published author, having interviews with everyone from George Takei to the cast of Letterkenny, this great Canadian reality show or comedy show. Like, people just, they see what they see on TV and they take it for reality, when the fact is there's a lot that gets cut. Like, I'm 6'7" dude, and as much as they were talking about it on the show, like slim, trim, tall, fair, all that stuff, there's not a single point in the show where anyone says, oh my God, look how tall he is. You know, it's these weird editing choices that people make to highlight certain things and not highlight the others, and to talk about things and not talk about the others. And it leaves, you know, the viewers in the audience with very specific impressions.
So you're almost like, on your height, for example, so I'm like 5'7", so I'm a full foot shorter than you, okay? And so like and as a shorter guy, you're automatically disqualified. So I was like, well, if I was taller, my brother's taller than me, right? He's like 5'10", 5'11". I was like, and he's like an ideal height, because, and I would say, are you saying that like being 6'7" is almost like, well, you're too tall now? You're above 6'3" or 6'4". Now it's just like,
the analogy I use is I like to call it circus freak territory. You know, like 6'2", 6'3", you're pushing it, but like people still want you around because you can reach stuff, and they feel like, well, he's a nice guy at least. But when you're 6'4" and up, it's like people look at you like, are those clown
unless you're in
shoes?
the NBA.
Well, even that, NBA players still get treated like that too when they're not on the court. NBA players still get treated like, oh, do you have to fold yourself to get into a plane? Like, how is it on the subway? Is it hard? And when you're 6'7" and not an NBA player and kind of have a little pudginess to you, you know, people look at you like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why is your body shaped like a stretched out orangutan? You know, like people will just grab your shoes and stuff them inside, like stuff their own shoes inside. Like, oh my God, look how much bigger it is. Like, grab your hand and hold it next to theirs. Like, oh my God, look how big it is. It's maddening. But it's also like, yeah, it's part of the thing of being too tall. Like, I'm so big that I have to consciously make myself smaller. People say that, you know, a lot of people in our generation have bad posture. For me, it's not about like, I'm lazy, I'm always like leaning back, just pop my headphones out, don't worry about it. It's about trying to make myself less intimidating and less big. Like, when you scrunch down, you're a shorter person.
Yeah, well, I never thought about it. So to me, it's like, when you have the opposite of height, you assume that, oh, like the grass is green on the other side kind of thing, right? So one of the reasons I was on Twitter, you know, and this show has become it's like really pulled up. I enjoyed the show, like, just to be very upfront, right? When I watch a show, I'm like, I don't think too deep. I'm just not like, oh, this show is classist. It reeks of caste systems, or like talks about, or colorism, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, that's the reality. For example, I saw some criticism that like, there was not a queer person on the show or a Muslim person on the show as a failing to represent. My take on it is that, listen, the main protagonist to me, the show, there's one constant person. It's Sima Auntie, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Sima Auntie has a certain demographic that she's can cater to, right? Either Hindu or Sikh, probably, you know, and because again, Muslims, we have some whole other, like, I mean, unless there might be a secular Muslim who operate under the same parameters as she would, I would say. But in generally speaking, she's operating that framework. And, you know, people who are Muslims or queer are outside her, frame, or her target market. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's my thought. So I didn't think of that. I wasn't like as a Muslim, I wasn't like, oh, wish there was how come there was no Muslim person on, right?
Yeah. No,
I didn't think about that.
Smriti Mundra, the EP, she said one of the things that she saw in those comments, like she was trying to read between the lines, and what she ended up seeing between the lines is that people are asking for more shows like this. People are asking for a Muslim version of this show. People are asking for a queer version of the show. People are asking for a version of the show that is about so much more than what the show can deliver. Like, you can't expect one show to fix all of these problems. All this show is trying to do is prove that a show like this can exist, prove that a show like this can do well and be successful, to pave the way for other shows like this. I'll tell you right now, if there is a gay, desi matchmaking show, I will be the first person to volunteer as host. I would love to host that show. I also think that, the show is very much showing reality for what it is. Casteism, colorism exist. It is reality. It is real. If you don't like that the show is showcasing that, fight it. Talk about it. Raise up the issue, because they're real issues, but it's not the job of the show to lambast them and to attack Sima. You can't attack the person who's the main driving force of the show.
Right. And you can't I don't agree with this idea that the show promotes colorism. The show normalizes. Colorism is normalized. It's not normalizing anything. Right?
We've been there. Like, the show's not doing anything that Indians haven't already done to themselves.
Right. So it's not like it's making it worse. It's already there. It's just bring it to light. So Sima Auntie must be, I'm guessing, if she's flying from Mumbai to America, it's no big deal all the time. She's got to be the best in the world at matchmaking.
They definitely present her as that. And it wouldn't surprise me if she is. Even during quarantine, she, according to an interview she did, she's matched two pretty big, powerful or successful people in Mumbai already. She's got steady business going even in the middle of a quarantine. So she's good. I mean, the show, people are criticizing oh, but no one on the show ended up together. That's 8 people out of her client base of what, 500, close to 1,000 now, probably.
Sure.
She's only getting more clients because of this show.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, Aparna said I read an interview with her that she actually hired a matchmaker for a consult call for 30 minutes when she was 26, and it was $300.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, we that's the profession that they should have been talking about. Freaking doctors and engineers, Rishta Auntie.
You want to make money. You become a matchmaker.
And it's almost in the South Asian communities, women are already doing it for free. Who's the networking? It's not the dudes who are networking for people to get hooked up. It's rare.
Yeah.
Between my wife and I'm the more social one. And so she asks me if she has a friend who's single. She'll ask me hey, do you know anybody, etc. But it's what, I'm gonna be how much are they willing to pay?
I know. Aunties and uncles have been doing this job for free for too long. It's time to get paid what you owe.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that, but you can make that kind of money where it's full time.
Oh yeah.
And it would be curious. She deserves an interview, because I would be interested in how she got started in that space. How long has that been a paid profession that you could actually pay for? Because my guess is sometimes what happens is that people do stuff for free, and then you get so overwhelmed. They're listen, the only thing I can do to differentiate, otherwise to have some sanity, is I start charging exorbitant amounts of money to get through, So yeah, to me, it wasn't I had no. I agree with you. If people want a show, when I host a podcast, right? People are not gonna. I'm sure when I put this podcast out, people are gonna be pissed off. Man, Maheen, you talked about Indian girls' facial hair. Oh, this and that. You're promoting colorism and you're misogynist or whatever. And I'm listen, I'm just being real. This is who I am, right? I mean, I don't, you want to have a conversation, we can have a conversation. But the thing of it is, just start your own podcast. It's not if you don't like my podcast, don't listen to my podcast. Go listen to another podcast. All right. Or listen to another episode, because there might be another show you like. Right. So I think that's kind of where, I completely agree with you in that sense that, if they want a queer desi matchmaking show, go knock yourself out, right? That would be interesting in the sense because the parents are probably not down with that. That's where it would be. That's the thing that I would be curious about. It'd be like low, because how could you get somebody, who without like having them like completely stigmatized?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, parents weren't always down with this show either. I mean, I was talking to some of the producers about it the other day, and they were saying, look, out of the 500 clients that we interviewed, maybe 90% of them said no to us. And even then, of the 1%, of the 10% that did say yes, it's like the parents are still like nervous about being on camera. They're still nervous about this intensely personal thing being televised to the world. You add that extra layer of being gay and brown and having a family find out, like we're talking about outing and coming out of the closet on Netflix, on the biggest streaming platform there is, you know? And it adds a whole other layer of, oh, I really don't want to do this. It's like, yeah, we should have shows like this. At the same time, we should also respect people's right to privacy. We should also respect that people, you know, not everybody's going to want to do this, and that's okay. With people, we need shows like this to exist, but we also need the space for these shows to exist in the first place.
Who's the one rich pretty boy? Pradyuman? I think.
Yeah, Pradyuman.
Yeah, so
who
you know,
argued so hard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone, like when I watch it, was like, oh, he's gay. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like, but to me, that was like the opposite, like, reaction. I'm like, I don't know how appropriate is that, you know, because he's putting himself out there.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, if he was gay, do you think he'd be out there putting himself on a Netflix matchmaking show to get with a girl?
It's so funny. Like, Pradyuman's story is so interesting because he and Aparna are foils to each other in so many ways. Like, they're both very upfront about what they're looking for, and they both get attacked for what they're looking for, you know, and what they present to the world. Whereas Aparna comes off as just very sarcastic, and like people finally are now starting to appreciate, like, oh, she's just being super sarcastic and funny. Pradyuman is just like comes off as he is, as just being like, physical attraction is important so that you can get to the mental attraction, so you can get to what you're looking for, which is like, he's entitled to look for what he looks for. At the same time, it's like, bro, you got to be consistent, and you got to be careful with what you're showing, because this is going on Netflix, and like, you got to know what meme culture is. You got to know what trolls are out there. You got to know that people are going to see a picture of your face on your door handle, and they're going to have questions, are going to have things they want to know, and things they're going to want to say about that. Like, you got to know that that's going to happen.
What? So let me ask you this again. This is like a kind of Hindu cultural question.
Sure.
He was doing the thing with the dolls, right?
Yeah.
Again, I didn't think much of that. Is that like, are people making that out to be? Are people making a mountain out of a molehill there? As far as his like creativity being outletted in making these like dresses for these little gods?
I would say Indian people aren't. I would say like a lot of American people who don't understand that part of the religion and culture, like in Hindu religion, like a really good shrine, yeah, it's like an impressive display of wealth and power to show that like, this is the respect that we have for God, that we have a new set of clothes for God every single day. Like, you treat these figures as living embodiments of God in your household, and to show that much respect and earnest care for them is really important. There are some Indian people who would think it's a little weird that a man is doing that, but it's not beyond the pale. I mean, my mom lives at a Hindu temple, and she like changes the deity's clothes every day.
Right,
well.
right.
Like, it's not unheard of. It's just like, oh, that's different.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I took it as well. And I'm like, listen, the dude likes working out. He likes clothes, right? He's a good-looking dude. I mean, like, I can admit that, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like, so I didn't. But this kind of almost like impression. Oh, he's got to be gay. No. That's not what it is. He is picky. I mean, obviously, rejecting 150 girls.
But even then, it's not like he went on a date with them and then rejected them. It's like Tinder. You swipe left or you swipe right. Like,
right. Exactly.
If we want to go through people's Tinder histories and talk about how many people they swipe left on, that's a whole different story. You know, it's the same thing. Like, you choose, like, you look it up. If you've seen 150 biodatas, you've seen at least 1,000 people swiping on Tinder.
Right. Cool. Last question before we wrap up here.
Yeah.
So when you were out with Manisha, you mentioned there was like, because I remember it came up in the, like, you like, I really want to see you again. And I think So a lot of time, like there's these theories out there now with relationships when, as a guy, that you've got to like even girls as they playing hard to get and stuff. And you come off as like kind of this, as pretty vulnerable, very open, like very honest, right? Which on paper it seems to be the way to go. That's natural. Like when you have friends, you're upfront and honest with them. Those are the kind of friends you like. You don't want friends who are backstabbers and like two-faced.
Yeah.
Games. But there's this like theory in relationships with intergender dynamics that you gotta like play this game, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Like, I'm sure you've heard the theories. You probably got some pushback from people like, hey, you put yourself out there and then she just, could dismiss you and like lose your dignity or whatever. Like, how do you approach that? Like, are you just yourself?
I think it's just about recognizing that all dating is a performance. No matter what level you are at, there is a level of performance that's inherent with the first date. You're trying to look nice. You're trying to be funny. You're trying to be friendly. You're trying to like behave properly. You're putting on all of these things to try to make yourself seem more appealing or try to put your best self forward when, again, not all of us have a best self to put forward. Some of us are just shitheads, And, like, when you talk about the game, when you talk about trying to play this game on top of all of the other things you're already doing, you get further and further away from yourself, and you actually end up getting further and further away from what you're looking for and what you get out of a relationship and what you even want from a relationship in the first place. You just have to ask yourself, what is really worth my time? Am I being fair to myself? And am I going to lose dignity from this person not being into me? Or am I going to lose dignity from me lying to myself about who I am? And being able to wake up and look at myself in the mirror some days. That's the bigger dignity, I think, to lose. Because again, when you're on camera, it's a whole other layer of performance and stuff that you go through as well. And it just put pressure on me, I think, to be more real, to be more open, to be more vulnerable. Because, if things are going to go the distance with this person, if the cameras are off and we have a moment to talk to each other, I don't want to put forth someone who's different than what they saw on camera. I want to put forth the same consistent image of myself so that we're all on the same page together, to be open, to be vulnerable, to be frank, to be honest. That's like the nicest, most kindest thing you can do for another person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to my own like personal like relationship history. When I was in college, I was pretty proper. I was the president of the Muslim Student Association. I remember I had a phase for like 2 years where I didn't wear like, right now I'm back to like sneakers, fitted ball caps, t-shirts, right? 38, dad, but it's like that's what I remember when I was a kid, how I liked that look, and I got away from it. Because what happens is, if I look at my own trajectory, when I became religious in my early 20s, you kind of put on this veneer of like religiosity. Because I've come to understand religiosity much differently now in my late 30s. That hey, it is about spirituality and relationship with God, and being a good person, and some of the outside effects. Like, because in my 20s, it would be like, having a long beard and wearing like what they call like the thobe. Like you've probably seen like the white, like it's not even like South Asian, it's like Arab, right?
Yeah.
And wearing like a head wrap, or I would wear that on Fridays at Ohio State, like walking around campus. And then like, or I wouldn't wear denim. It'd always be button ups, like slacks, right? So and I like to be honest, I like dressing up, to be honest. But I remember at the time, and I was pretty proper for the most part, but it wasn't me. Because in middle school, high school, like the guy I was before I was religious was kind of like a no filter, I don't give a shit kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Then when I became like more religious in my early 20s, you kind of like I'm putting on this veneer. Now it's kind of like, I'm trying to be authentic to myself, but also like maintaining that decorum in that certain way. So I almost feel like when I was going through the whole matchmaking process myself, it was like, when you're meeting somebody, you got to be wearing like a nice blazer. And I remember when I went to meet my wife, back to that story, my dad is like, "Are you gonna wear a tie?" I'm like, "No, that's just too over the top." Like I don't mind wearing a tie. I'm the kind of guy that I would like wearing a tie to like some place where people are dressed down,
sure.
Right? Because I want to wear a tie, but not because I'm going to like meet some potential suitor. But even then, you're like, you're going through this phase. There's formality that you're going through. And if I could have, I'm not saying I would have like not married my wife. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, I don't want to get myself in trouble here. But what I'm saying is that like there is like how I would have done it now, like 11 years later. Because when you're 38, what you realize as you're getting older, you're also like you're becoming more true to who you really are, right? Because in my 20s, as a teenager, I was a certain way, and in my 20s, I was a certain way, and now who I am at 38 is almost like who I was as a kid, like because I think of myself as a kid at heart, like right, and I kind of say what's on my mind. I didn't say that in my 20s. I didn't really like have this like no filter attitude. I was kind of like more careful, and now it's like all like and I've also become more versed in my own religion, which has taught me that like, oh, there's a lot of flexibility in some things that I used to think were very rigid. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
So that's to me is like kind of the thing. So to me, if you're like you're 30, right? 30, 31.
I'm turning 30 in September. Yeah.
Okay. So like I think for you it's basically like you know this is a great process. I think it's just you know if I you didn't ask me for advice, but I'm just gonna give it to you as a married dude. Like, you know, you got all the time in the world, man. It's just like, because like, I think we grow as individuals. Like, I think if I was 38, let's say if I was single and 38, probably how I go about things is completely different than how it would have been in the past. You know, back in the day, it was just like, you know, again, see my wife's picture, the biodata. And then in February of 09, I remember my dad's like, hey, we're coming to Chicago because they're going to be in Chicago and we need to meet. And I was like, I'm busy that weekend. Right. I'm like, I'll give you 2 hours. So, you know, we go with me. I was like, hey, I actually like this girl kind of thing, right? We talked, but the thing is, it's like, so like, it's kind of like the families get together and they're all talking to each other. And we're just, it's that scene with Akshay, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, I mean, listen, and I told my mom before we were going, I'm like, listen, I got to talk to this girl one-on-one at some point, or this is not happening.
Yeah.
You know, and then what happened was I got like 20, all the fluff was like so much in the beginning part. So like I got 20 minutes with her and then we're like, all right, well, I was like, she's cool. Cause like I remember the question I asked her was like, cause my father-in-law, I mentioned she's from the Delta, Mississippi. My father-in-law was a professor at Mississippi Valley State. I don't know. Are you a fan of professional sports?
Moderately, yeah. But I know Mississippi Valley. Yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah, because Jerry Rice played there, right?
Yeah,
so I remember that I mentioned that, like, hey, so who's the famous athlete and alum of Mississippi Valley State? And she was like, oh, Jerry Rice. I was like, oh, okay, this girl's I'm a 49ers fan. So I was like, oh, this is a keeper.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, keeper. Yeah,
you know, although I don't think she realized how nuts I was about sports from that conversation. Because it didn't come up later. Because now what happened was that, okay, it's like, oh, we clicked. It feels like some chemistry. I like this girl. Now we're talking on the phone every week for like an hour on the phone. And it's like to the point, like, hey, what do you see with your life? What's your questions? What kind of engineer are you? That she's asking me, like, right? All this kind of stuff. I'm like, are you like, how my wife's a gynecologist. So I'm like, how do you plan on handling your career with kids kind of thing? You know, very technical questions that like get to like core issues that you deal with.
Yeah.
But not a lot of personality. Cause I'll tell you what happened is that we spoke from mid-February to mid-March. And then I was like, back then I was such a hardcore Muslim that I followed there's an opinion that people that you don't listen to music. So I didn't listen to music, right? So she said she listened to like cultural Bengali music. And I was like, this is like a red flag. It's a red flag, right? So, and I told her that. I told her, yeah, it's a red flag. I got to think about this. And then I went ahead and like asked some of my friends and they were like, bro, if your only gripe is this girl listens to, she's not listening to like, you know, beauty music. She's listening to like cultural Bengali music, which is pretty clean. I'm like, yeah. And I was like, I was like, yo, well, you know, I listened to the Ohio State fight song. So I guess it's okay.
I think it's fine. You know what? I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. So like, I think, and then, you know, but then my dad went and like talked to her dad and she said yes. And then, but then we didn't talk at all. I remember it was just like, and then right before the wedding, it was like, oh, hey, logistically, where do you want to go for honeymoon? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, let's go here. So it's kind of like you're doing that, but this is a very by the book process. You're like, all right, I'm engaged to you now. Because in the Muslim religion, when you're engaged to somebody, it doesn't mean you can go like start banging, right?
Yeah.
even though, I mean, physically we're distant. I'm in Chicago, she's in Mississippi, but there's this kind of like, she's still a stranger to you. There's this whole concept we call the mahram, like either mahram or non-mahram, right? Mahram's a family member. Non-mahram is someone who is like a stranger. So she's still, even though she's my fiance, she's still like a stranger to me. So I maintain that. I was like, there's nothing else I need to talk to her about right now. I've agreed to marry her. She's agreed to marry me, and we're getting married in 3 months. So I'm just gonna like chill, right? And then you and then you go to the marriage. So then you spent that time getting to know each other, etc. You know, people don't do it that way anymore. It seems to me, it's kind of like a lost art, you know. But you know, at the end of the day, it's got me 11 years and 3 kids. So
yeah, it seems like you're doing all right.
Doing all right, for sure. Hey, real quick, somebody told me you're a Steelers fan and a Texans fan.
I don't know who told you that. I mean, look, I went to college in Meadville, Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half north of Pittsburgh. So, like, you either become a Steelers fan and hide the fact that you're from Texas, or, you know, you don't make it too long up there. And then, you know, as far as the Texans go, I mean, really, what are my other options? Root for the Cowboys? Like, no one in Texas actually likes the Cowboys. We all own a piece of Cowboys paraphernalia that we're not too proud of, not too proud to have. I'm just happy that you're wearing a Stros cap, you know?
Yeah. Especially all the hate, you know, all the heat they're getting, right?
Yeah.
With the cheating and whatever. I'm like,
I know.
I like the colorway, you know? It matches my
good.
t-shirt.
So, yeah, there you go. That blue and orange, man. There's something to it.
All right, Vyasar, hey, appreciate you coming on. Where can people like find out more about you, or like, I guess, connect with you? Twitter is how we linked up, right?
Yeah, Twitter's how we linked up. @NotVyasarG, NOTVYASARG is a great place to check me out. If you want to see some of the stuff that I've written and some of the stuff that I've published, VyasarWrites.com is a great place to go. It's got all my relevant publications. You can see all the stuff that I've worked on, and I'll be happy to link the podcast up there too, for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, and you know, my friend was telling me, he's like, his Twitter handle is not Vyasar. Are you sure it's really him? And I was like, well, I guess I'll find out on Wednesday. And unless you got a twin, it's really you.
No, it's really me. I just do it because I did it because thought it was funny. It's one of those things. It's like, it's only funny for you and just stupid to everybody else.
Do you see, you've been so easy to work with as being like this new celebrity, right? This is uncommon. Do you see, like, I get this feeling you're getting busier and busier with these commitments. When are you going to draw the line as far as what you say yes to?
You know, the school year has kind of shifted into low gear, but I can feel high gear coming on. When things get busier there, I'll probably take a log off the fire over here. But we still got another month. You know, I'm just enjoying the ride for right now. We'll see how it goes.
I appreciate it. For our listeners out there, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. If there's a platform that I'm not on that you want me to be on, email me at info@sultansandsneakers.com. This video will also be up on YouTube and Facebook for the people who prefer the video version. For my special guest, Vyasar Ganesan from Netflix's Indian Matchmaking, I'm your host, Maheen, the podcaster, signing off.